Hello, friends. Welcome to the next installment of the Modern Masters series. Today we are looking at number three on our list, and I have a very special guest with me, Peanut Butter. How are you?
I thank you for having me today, and I'm looking forward to analyzing these games with you and talking about our number three player on the list.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. So, number three on the list is going to be probably one of the most surprising ones because this is a gentleman who hasn't been very active in recent times, but he has displayed an absolute dominance over the game of anti-chess for many years, particularly around that kind of 2019 to 2021. It's a little bit before the current time, but he still pops up now and then just to come back and crush people. And this man is Pepsi in gaming. So, Peanut Butter, can you tell us a little bit about what you know about Pepsi?
So, Pepsi was one of the first players I met from the community back when I joined Discord in 2020. Back then, I was mostly into Racing Kings, and when I started to shift towards the anti-community, he was one of the first people I spoke to. And back then, he was like completely dominating the game. Also, as a player, I think very talented, pretty skillful, fast, and has a great understanding of the game, um, which is explained by how he manages to stay at the top every time he comes to play because um, he's not very consistently active, I would say, in the community. But every time he did come back to play different tournaments or just play a couple games with someone, he's managed to stay at the top and assert dominance that portrays his strong understanding of the game. And that's what I think of him as a player.
Yeah, I mean, he's proven himself in many formats. I think we kind of know him as a quick player. He's really strong at like a 1-0 time control, but he is also an anti-chess world champion from, like the early days, 2020 or so. And it was even around that time he was even starting to play other things. You say like you were a Racing Kings player. He was also into a like Crazy House and other things as well. So we have these multi-talented people who also are really good at anti-chess. A couple of other achievements I found super impressive were his performances in these like 24-hour tournaments, the Antichess Revolution, which he won both of them, and they're like 5 years apart. I think there was one like 2018 and one other 2023. And to be able to like, and I do think he played just about the entire 24 hours and then won it again. I think that was incredible.
Yeah, no, like for me, I played in the second 24-hour tournament, and I mean, the perseverance he displayed in that tournament and how he ended up winning it just showed that it's probably the best, if not one of the best, contenders to end up winning those tournaments. So yeah, it's incredible what he did there.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about Pepsi is a bit of a personal story for the law is when I first kind of got into Lee chess and I started playing, like I barely talked to anybody. I just played on my phone. I didn't even know there was a community. And Pepsi was kind enough to invite me into his own Discord, his own community. And I actually met a lot of people through there. Became friends with people like the Unknown Guy Reborn and Tolius and others. And really it was almost inspired me to start doing this series because Pepsi loved his top 10 lists of everything. He was always so into what are the top 10 animes or movies or anti-players and so forth. And I kind of thought, oh, it's a very good question. Maybe we can kind of try to answer that. And actually, one of his best friends in that Discord server was Ogle1. And Ogle is actually a two-time world championship runner-up to a Cat. very, very strong player. And yet he did it when he was still around like 16, 17 years old. And of course, Pepsi was at a similar age around that time. You know, you don't realize that when he was at his strongest, he was probably only 17, 18, you know, and a lot of modern players also show that talent around that age. So what we're going to look at today, we've got a game with Pepsi versus Ogle. And it's a 1-0 game, which kind of suits the style. And you can see those ratings there are absolutely gigantic, which is interesting because they do fluctuate. They do go up and down. I think a couple of years after that, we had record low ratings, and now they're kind of back again. But I think it's fitting we see a game of Pepsi against Ogle, two absolute young masters of the game. And Peanut is going to take us through it with his expert commentary.
All right, let's get into this between Pepsi and O. So, as here, Pepsi is black and Ogle's white. And Ogle starts with probably the most common opening in all of anti, in my opinion, E3. And Pepsi responds with B6. This is more uncommon. Yeah, I feel like, in my opinion, I like it a whole more than something like B5, which is like probably the most common counter to this opening of E3. So B6 is played here, followed by what is theory at the most. Now this move here from white for C3 is an inaccuracy according to Stockfish, but I quite like it because it goes off of theory, and then now we can like start looking into the positional play of both these players. So black captures on rook h2, which is a forced capture. And now black has to make a decision of what he wants to play, obviously, because white has given him that opportunity to start thinking about how he wants to develop his pieces. There's a knight here, and of course, this white has access to this entire file, and the left side of the board is pretty much belonging to white right now. Black chooses to maneuver his knight to the middle, so knight c7. Knight e2, blunder again, suggested by Stockfish, but to be fair, rook h2, rook h1, it's more or less the same thing. Obviously, Stockfish is looking at this and bringing the knight out here so that there's a threat on this file, and so that later on white can open up the bishop. But it's okay, knight e2 works as well, just for a different position. And here, Pepsi maneuvers his knight middle, same file, just now here attacking these pawns and attacking a potential capture there. Four, so Ogle plays into the position and doesn't allow for Pepsi to develop that knight any further. Forced capture, forced capture again. Now Pepsi plays g6. Again, Stockfish suggests we play d5, but again, he chooses to play something which he sees or feels is better in this position, again demonstrating positional understanding. So g6, knight into g6 as a forced capture, obviously. And now white has plenty of options. This file is belonging to the rook, and this square is overprotected by the knight and the bishop. And here, suggesting we open up this file so that later on we can attack this and potentially that square with the bishop. So let's see what Ogle plays here. B4. Okay, that's an interesting move right there, because it seems to me, also as it does to Stockfish, that he loses out on a pretty decent edge of +3 position by playing that move. So forced capture, forced capture. Now Ogle decides to play, sorry, Pepsi decides to play B5. That's interesting as well, because I would say he's looking at this move,
Yep.
but again, white still has this square to attack and open up this bishop. Ogle, though, has the right idea, but he plays the wrong move. So instead of playing d3, decides to go with e4, and then that's automatically a mate for black, which Pepsi is quick to jump upon. He notices it, brings the queen out, starts playing it into the hands of the mate, forced capture. And then here, obviously, there's a extra move for Pepsi since the knight is already in position for the capture. Plays it there. Now here, though, this is difficult to notice
It's
while
actually
in
really
game.
difficult, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
again, it's a 1-0 game, and if you make an error, you're left just with a couple of pawns. So, you kind of have to have some kind of precision or at least confidence in the position. And that's why I think, Pepsi's next move of like A6, even though it's not the accurate move, you can understand the positional element. He's just trying to like kind of block things up to give himself enough room without, because calculating like mate and 10, very difficult, but you can kind of see how it pans out. He still has a pretty good idea, even just with one little oversight.
exactly. Also, if we do notice, since it's a 1+0 game and they still have about more than 35 seconds left on the clock, so that's pretty incredible to me how they both ended up in this almost end game of a position that quick.
Mm,
So here, Pepsi chooses to play A6. Obviously, that is fine in when you're playing game or trying to find the mate because, as we both said in the game, it's difficult to find the mate. And here, Ogle would have been fine had he promoted to a king, because
mm,
not
mm,
all black's pieces are connected. They're all splattered across the board. But Ogle misses that too, promotes to a knight. When he promotes to a knight, this piece is already hanging, and the bishop is free to move around. So instead, Pepsi decides to play this intermediate right here. So white can go capture there, there, and there, while black's rook can capture all of white's pieces here and set up the checkmate perfectly. So we see it play out exactly how I just mentioned it, and that's how black ends up winning the game. So this game, in my opinion, is just very quality positional understanding because to start with, white had a good position about almost half of the game, and we could see a couple of inaccuracies, blunders here and there, but they were all fine and setting up alternate positions. But when finally Black made this mistake of playing e4 here instead of d3, Pepsi saw it and turned the game around with queen to a5 and then bishop pawn there, and bishop can move around freely. So I feel like it was a that's what the positional understanding is, being able to see your opponent's mistake and being able to capitalize on that. So this was a pretty good game for Black, in my opinion.
yeah, I mean, obviously, it's all very fine and well when you have stockfish to analyze. You can say, oh yes, you made a mistake.
Yeah,
But you're playing live 1-0 against the best player, one of the best players in the world. You're gonna have to change it up a bit. You're gonna have to improvise. You're gonna have to be creative, and to have that foresight, to have that positional understanding that even when you make a mistake, you can recover really quick. And then to just bang out that beautiful Rook C8 finish is a very stylish way to end. And, it's just deserving of that sort of accolade, really, when you look at all the achievements that Pepsi's done throughout the time. So we hope he can come back to the game at some point. We know we've already had some brilliant players retire, like Jodl and others and so forth. But maybe he'll still come back now and then just to thrash some people, just to show he's still good, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, really a great overall understanding.
also, I would like to add a comment on his play style. He's one of the few players that inspired my play style actually, because I also rely mostly on my positional understanding of the game and how positions turn out in different games, but I do not try to rely on theory at all because me as a player, I've never actually studied the variant, but I've just continued playing and I've just picked it up from my games how I play now. So yeah, I would probably say his play style is a contributor to how nowadays. So that's pretty. inspiring in some ways for up and coming players.
Yeah, that's a great point because I think Pepsi also played pretty creative openings. In fact, I believe like E3 and then Knight H6 was one of his pet openings. They used to call it the Raven opening after his handle Raven. So yeah, like he really could play an abundance of different things and just certainly didn't rely on theory. And then he'd even create his own kind of ideas. Like even when I was looking through some of his games, it gave me ideas about, oh, okay, I could be creative and play these sort of different moves. Get away from the theory, don't just rely on the computer. And it's more fun, it makes anti-chess a more fun game this way. I mean, otherwise, what's the point of just studying a computer the whole time? But that creativity really highlighted Pepsi's play as well. So absolutely, you're right.
Indeed, yeah. It's also pretty respectable to me to play a little more risky than passive, because then you're willing to take that chance of like learning something new and then throwing your opponents in positions they would end up blundering and you end up winning.
So that's great advice from, the play of Pepsi, but also thank you, Peanut Butter, for giving us your insights and encouragement into the game as well. That's really awesome advice. And I think we'll probably leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Modern Master series. That was number 3. And next we will be seeing the final 2, so don't miss it and be here for that here on Anti-Chess Law. So then one more time, thank you so much, Peanut Butter, for coming along,
My pleasure.
and I'll see you in the next video.